only other thing I can mention is this man that's insisting to come through really, really strongly. A man that would be on like father's generation. This wouldn't be what I would consider a recent passing, so probably not within the past 5 years or anything along those lines. The reference with his passing is an acknowledgement that he passed away quickly, abruptly, and without people expecting him to go. And this is a unique thing. There's a reference to a vehicular accident that I have to highlight. I'm calling this an event that I'm wanting to highlight. I don't want you to give anything away, but do you know even possibly who that could be? Be a generation above you?
Yes.
Okay. I'm correct in saying that this is your dad coming through, right? Okay.
My real dad.
Right?
Actually, his name, my real biological father's name was Robert, and he was killed in a car accident when he went on vacation. And it was abrupt and really, you know, it was horrible. It was so many years ago now. You know, you have, your heart has time to heal, and you always regret what you never got to say.
The father figure that I'm connecting with is making it a point to acknowledge that, do you know of anyone like, it was like Mary Jo or Mary something, or like, it's kind of confusing. I don't know if it's two names or what, but the example that's coming through is like Mary Jo, Mary Ann.
Well, Mary Jo's my mom, but she's not deceased.
Okay, no problem. Is making it a point to acknowledge that he feels like he's apologetic towards Mary Jo being your mother.
Yeah. My parents were divorced when I was really young, and then when, you know, he had moved to a different state for a while, and we really didn't see him that much. And then we reconnected when I was a teenager, like 15, 16, and he was killed in a car accident. And my mom got married later in life, and we were really close to my stepdad, Harry. They both felt like my dad, but the whole thing makes sense.
Yeah. And he's acknowledging a feeling of a sense of closure with that situation, and he still watches over you and still comes through for you, regardless of how relationships and situations go. He still has that connection.
My real dad passed away years ago, but it was just really great to hear that he was watching over us, and it's just really peaceful.
They are, for some reason, having me talk about, like, on Dad's side, there's this individual who would have really been heavily involved in, like, fishing. And this keeps coming in as, like, making fishing trips, doing the fishing, it's coming in. Would anyone connected on Dad's side of family have any connections to this object? Perfect. There was this reference to a lot of emotional instability. Sometimes if people end their lives or take their own life, obviously that can sometimes kind of contribute. But they're having me kind of talk about this feeling of, like, I was unwell before I passed. It just feels really, like, tragic is kind of the way I would describe it. So they're having me talk about the intending to go to a car. So I have to figure out what this is, but there's a whole situation where someone, it's tricky. So this isn't like car accident thing, it's not that. But they're talking about a vehicle, but putting this around someone's, like, last moments, one's life. It feels weird. Does that mean anything?
Yeah, well, my dad, he had broke his back, and he happened to have a really rare blood disorder that kept him from healing. Similar to hemophilia, it doesn't allow you to clot your blood. And so he was slowly, for years, getting platelet transfusions and they put rods in his back, everything, and eventually they said, you're gonna be a paraplegic and then a quadriplegic, and then you're gonna die. And there's nothing we can do about it. And so my dad decided to take matters in his own hands because he was in a huge amount of pain every day. He couldn't work anymore. He felt like he was just a drag on the family. And he was very much like a person who takes care of everyone. And he drove his car out and he put a hose in the exhaust.
I'm sorry.
I was 8 years old. I remember that when he passed, I would just try to just tell myself that he was on a business trip and he'd be back. And that was my way to cope with it.
I'm gonna keep going with this. Your dad's having me talk about the timing of his death. And then for some reason, your dad's having me talk about you as a younger person. And There's this emphasis on learning, and it's like this death happens, and the feeling is like still having to kind of get past this. They're trying to give me a message, and I can't make it change. Earlier, there was the fishing reference for some reason. I don't know why they're putting emphasis on this. Did that mean anything in context?
Like you said about, passing at an inopportune time, I was overcoming a speech problem. I had a difficult birth. I had the umbilical cord around my neck and had delayed speech development. I didn't really start talking until I was 6. And to get me to talk, the therapist said, make me go do stuff, but come do things. So my dad would take me fishing. And then one of the stories my mom likes telling me is that it was raining cats and dogs outside. And I was like in the living room, my fishing pool, everything. And they're like, Ronnie, what are you doing? And the only words that I could say were, I'm going fishing. And yeah, that was something we would do all the time. Yeah, it was a pretty bad time. I ended up homeschooling for a while after that because I really couldn't deal with it very well. And all those changes at that time.
I think, when they come through, they bring those things up to just wanting their loved ones to know that they're aware of it. And there's this feeling of an overruling feeling of you being able to still grin and bear it and get through and toughen up and move forward despite dealing with these really tragic, sad situations. But there's such an awareness of, oh my God, look, I realize now what she was having to deal with, what she was having to handle and all of the responsibilities. And there's a feeling of an apology with that, so just please know that. So do we have any Jeffreys on Dad's side?
Jeffrey is my dad's name.
Oh, okay.
So
That would be it.
that would be it.
Okay. Before I get into the details with this, he is going to acknowledge his passing. I get an immediate sense of relief and an immediate sense of comfort. So before I even, move forward with the details, I want you to know that he's perfectly fine. Because that's people's biggest questions. So I always like to acknowledge that right from the get-go. He comes across and is putting his family before anything. And that's the #1 priority. From his perspective, he acknowledges that he was more successful with his family than he ever could have been when it comes to professionally. Because from his perspective, the feeling is when it comes to wealth, I have the wealth of my family. And that's the feeling that comes through. He's immediately referencing to his passing. He's referencing to the last 12 months of his life and putting a heavy significance on this time frame. He's referencing to mobility, referencing to back, where I feel like my back is hurting. My back was hurting on the way here.
He was in so much pain.
And I feel like my body loses its ability to process liquids, where I'm referencing to kidney and liver. I feel like we might have dealt with a little liver thing, but kidney is kind of the area that I'm primarily focused on. He's bringing me to the kidneys.
I mean, he died from kidney cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
From his perspective, he's acknowledging that he either had to have personally not wanted treatment or rejected dialysis, but there's acknowledgement he's saying towards the end, I actually refuse, or I push this away. I'm not wanting this.
That was a conversation by the doctors.
He was never really fully fighting.
Sure.
I think he was going through something that he was, I don't know, as sad as it is, I think almost ready to give up in a way.
Sure.
I'll go get my mom.
Sure.
If you'd be willing to chat with her.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
It seems like there's a lot that you have
Definitely.
to maybe tell her.
Yeah, no worries.
Are you okay? Do you want to go speak with him?
Sure.
You don't have to.
I will.
It's totally
I don't
up
want
to
to
you.
miss a chance to not be with Daddy. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm okay. Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
So have you been listening in on the reading?
I have.
Good. Did some of it make sense?
So much of it.
Good. I'm so glad.
When you said about the forehead, when Jeff was at the end of his life, he had a thrust in his mouth, and so we weren't able to kiss him on his lips. So we had to kiss him on his forehead. That really resonated with me.
One of the ways that he tried to communicate to you was in a dream.
I have had 2 visitation dreams. This last dream, I knew the last dream he actually kissed me on the lips. And when I woke up for 2 hours, I just kept licking my lips because I could feel his lips on mine. And Jeff and I, we were young and we saw ghosts, and we always promised each other that if one of us ever went, then the other one would come back. And it was exactly like ghosts. I mean, where I just woke up out of it. It was like my whole body, I thought it was like an electrical shock. Wow. I've been with Jeff since I was 16 years old. So living without him has obviously been a huge struggle. But I've always known that if he could find me and find us, that he would. And that's what I got from it. That he does know where to find us, and he will travel with us.
This is an interesting way to start this, but I kind of have to go with where I'm being led. Immediately, I'm connecting to an older man that's coming through. He comes through very much so as a very paternal figure, either biologically dad or someone who was like dad. And he is acknowledging immediately, from his perspective, he feels like he was either disconnected from some members of family or distanced from some members of family at the time of his death. Would you happen to know an October connection to him? Okay. As he's coming through, though, he's acknowledging, he's saying he was stubborn, he was acknowledging that the situation was just a lot of stubbornness, it was unnecessary ego. He's not showing me the traditional situation where we're hospitalized, going to the hospital, die in the hospital with our loved ones around us. It's not that kind of thing. He wasn't particularly happy with the way that he was found. And that's
I wouldn't be. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Who would this be for you?
You're holding onto my dad's watch.
Oh, wow.
So he passed away. I think he was wearing, I believe he was wearing that watch, but he passed away alone in his home. We received a call in October from the police, but it was days after he passed away that he was found by virtue of newspapers being or collecting on the front of the house. He was very stubborn. I was kind of pissed at him, you know, during this passage of time too, because of his stubbornness, because his health was clearly not in the place where he should be living alone.
Right. What he's showing is a commonality between yourself and himself. He acknowledges that he does have a lot of pride for you, and that's big. And I want you to know that he's incredibly proud of you.
But he's saying that now.
Yeah, he's acknowledging that. And it's interesting because...
Is there growth after death?
Absolutely, because the reason being is that he's acknowledging this was the reason, because it's something he never took accountability for in life.
Right.
This man that's coming through is full well acknowledging, I did not take accountability for things when I should have taken accountability for them in my life. And it's important for him to acknowledge on the other side that he does take accountability for it. He's acknowledging an apology for that distance.
Apology accepted.
Good.
This is all great stuff.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it's all...
Good, okay, great.
I can sew all this together.
Yeah. They're bringing up Dad. He basically feels as it's coming in that he's trying to kind of comfort the living people left behind in this. So that's good to keep in mind.
That is so your dad.
They're having me talk about the three. Give me one sec. Yeah, they're having me talk about a reference of 3 siblings. So do you know where the 3 siblings would be within family?
Me and my 2 brothers.
Nice. So the way that they're bringing this up, this is something you might have to actually check with brother situation, because they're having me talk about the 2 boys. They're having me talk about having plans with one of them. They're having me talk about, it's like a mutual understanding, but this just keeps coming through in more of a business way. One sec. Keep in mind they are referencing to an E name within family. I can't tell who this is, but I'm saying just like an E. Do you have any E names within family?
My little brother, Easton.
Nice. And Dad's putting a very strong emphasis on him.
Yeah, my dad was in real estate development and wanted to kind of bring my younger brother into that with him. You know, every little business venture that my dad would kind of step into in his older age, he always wanted Easton to be a part of it in some capacity.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think he's just proud of him and wants him to keep that going and keep that entrepreneurial spirit and the investments.
Totally.
And I think he'll even kind of be there for your brother intuitively, like helping him know what to do and like guiding him. So tell him that. And, like,
I will.
Let him know. It basically feels as it's coming in that he just acknowledges wishing that he kind of could have tied those loose ends at the very end in certain ways, and it just doesn't feel for some reason that he was able to. It's important, I think, in the way this comes through, just to validate that brother, to say that there was still love there, and oftentimes it's their way of almost taking accountability for maybe what they didn't see in life. When it comes through, the message there is that if he could do it over, he would have showed a little bit more love to brother. and would have made that clear.
Yeah.
He doesn't want your older brother to feel left out. He's just emphasizing him. He's basically, I'm seeing like lassoing him in, which is always a way of trying to say like, we want to include this person. We want to bring them up because they need to feel validated.
Can I grab a tissue?
Absolutely. Okay. Okay. Okay, give me 1 sec. I feel like I have to talk about Mom. He really just emphasizes your mom moving on, wanting your mom to move on. Like he
Don't
keeps
say that.
I know, right? He keeps coming through, like wanting her to be able to move on. The way this kind of comes through, he's like doing this, and when they do that, it's always a way of saying trying to orchestrate a meeting with someone. So as weird as it sounds, like if she ends up big with someone else, he's kind of bringing up like helping them connect because there's still a feeling of like she needs love, and
Yeah.
I feel like she's gonna get it, and he would want her to continue having happiness. It's important. Who passed in December?
My dad.
Okay. So I feel like I have to bring up Dad. Your dad is much more straightforward when he's presenting himself.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. When he's coming through, he's the one who's kind of putting the center of attention on himself. He's having me acknowledge at the time of passing, did he die of cancer?
Yes.
Okay, because I feel like he's showing me cancer. Did he smoke and then stop smoking?
Yes.
Went to my lungs. But he did quit.
Yeah, he quit for
Yeah.
30 years.
My gosh.
My father was the talkative type of guy. I mean, he made sure everybody in the room had fun when he was there.
Oh yes, center of attention.
Yeah. What he said about my father, how he was coming through so dominantly, that was my father. Tyler hit that on the head too.
Do you ever remember your dad having to take off like the outer layer of his clothing when he came home from work? And the feeling basically is like, if I'm covered in mud or dirt, or like, my dad, for example, is in construction, he does tile, and
My
he's-
dad was in construction also.
Interesting. He's placing himself in work and acknowledging work, and he's feeling like he was more comfortable working than he was communicating sometimes when it comes to fully talking about his emotions, his feelings.
That's my father.
Your dad's way of showing his love was working. And in his mind, if he was able to provide to the best of his ability, then that was his way of expressing love. He comes across and looks back at his life, and he wishes that he would have told you as a little boy, I love you and I'm proud of you every single day. He wishes that he would have been able to have that one-on-one time because he understands now, in retrospect, that to some extent, certain things weren't good enough from his perspective. And he wishes he would have done some things differently. But he still comes across very connected and loves you very much. But he, as a father, has understood some lessons. And he now knows how important it is to communicate and to talk about how you feel. For him, he was just a hard worker. He just wanted to work. He just wanted to be able to do that. And that was his way of providing. He's having me just acknowledge this feeling of like, I need my son to know how much I love him because I wish I would have said that more in life. And no matter what you would have achieved, he's still coming through and like, he still needs to hear it. He still needs to hear it.
Oh, boy.
Oh. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. Oh, this is exactly what I needed to hear.
Good, I'm so glad.
Oh, boy.
He's learned a lot, and he takes accountability, and he understands, and he comes through with so much love and clarity, but he understands now in a way that he didn't understand in life, and he has a good soul.
Yes.